It's a real miserable day today. It's the 5th of June, can you believe? And it's been raining all morning, which has been brilliant, but it's stopped at the moment. So I'm taking the opportunity to just do a quick YouTube on the progress of the garden so far, or part of the garden. This bit, as I've shown before, is the Karl Forster border, or the Calamagrostis acutiflora border. It's now become a bit more than just that. It's got a lot of grasses in. So we've got the Calamagrostis, which is the tall one, now coming into seed head. They're not finished yet. They will go at least another 1.5 foot up, but there's loads of them. This was really my first proper border that I dug out a couple of years ago when we first got here. And it's extended probably 4 foot bigger in the width than I originally did. And I don't think I can really move it on much more than, say, another 1.5 foot to allow for more plants. But it's really intended as a grass border. Nothing more than that. But I do have other plants within it. So this one is a Miscanthus sinensis, and that one's called Malapartus, and that's a really good one. And then I've got your typical Verbena bonariensis in here that's growing. Now, this was a little plant I took from somebody else's garden about 1.5 years ago, and I plonked it in here. It grew last year, didn't do very well. Only had a few sparse flowers, which they do anyway. And I've recut it back down, and then we've got quite a lot of flowers being set at the moment. Behind here we've got Vernonia. Now, I use Vernonia because I just like it. It's very much like Eupatorium, except it's a lot stronger and a lot taller than any Eupatorium. So it's going to make at least, I reckon, from last year, 7 foot. And it produces a little domed purple head on top of it, pretty much similar to the Eupatoriums. But I like to mix it in with the grasses because it does look good. Now, I know I said it's just a grass border, but I wanted some sort of a colour in here, and I put this Helenium in here. It's a yellow one. I can't remember exactly which one it is. It's a Bressingham one. And I need to look that one up to just see which one I did put in. So I'm in constant renewal and rejuvenation on this border. And we've got the Euphorbia there. That's a Wolfenii that I took out of a garden not too many miles from here. And it was a big manor house, and it had loads and loads of Caryakis in there, which had mixed in with what was a Wolfenii, and they'd sort of like sent out loads of progeny, and there's seeds everywhere. So I selected 3 really good ones. 2 I've still got here, this being one of them. The best one was really blue and very nice, but typically it died. So yeah, well, actually I took 4. I'm just looking at another one at the garden. I took 4, and like I say, the best one of the lot died, but not to worry. So this is what I call the longer border, and it goes quite a way up there. It goes right up there, up to what I call the shack. We may not make it up there in today's video, but we'll do that one another day. So, like I say, it's intended to be a grass border, but I've added little bits and bobs. I've added this allium, which is Allium summer drummer. Just getting into its flow now. And it's a typical allium once it pops out. It has this weird look about it. Now, one thing I've not been happy with is early on it tends to have this horrible looking leaf. And the idea of planting it in here was for it to be hidden by the grasses, and then it gets... Because what they do is they've got sacrificial leaves, and by that I mean once the flower head pops out into seed, into a flower, then it sacrifices those leaves and they'll go yellow. So it's best to hide them. So that's what I did here. But to be quite honest with you, it does it quite early on. It starts sacrificing. It has that orangey yellow tinge to the leaf when it's just dying away, and I didn't really want it looking like that in here. So I've decided next year it's going to come out. I'm toying with putting Chamazias in, because Chamazias will do their show just at the right time, and they will pop up through these and they won't look as bad. But with Chamazias you have to be careful because they become very invasive in the end. So we have to be careful. So moving on up the border, there's a poppy there that's self-set. I've took loads out of here. I don't really want it. I think it's the opium poppy, that one. Not sure, because there's another one that looks very similar in this garden. I'm going to leave that one. It's the only one I've left. There was quite a lot in here the other day, but as I said, I want it to be a grass border and not a perennial border, or mainly a grass border. Now that is Melinia. That's called Melinia Point de Say, and it was found near a bridge in France, where it got its name from. And the interesting thing about this one is it has sort of it's described as a deep olive green stem, and it goes into the seed head as well, so which is quite unusual for a Melinia. And its only fault is it's quite arching. It's quite a big plant when it gets going, quite a big arching stem, but it nevertheless it arches out and it'll arch onto the grass, which I'll put up with. It can become a bit of a nuisance, and it's probably better suited in a border, in the middle of a border, where it can do its thing and still arch, but you'd never really notice it arching. But this is where it is, and this is where I intend keeping it until I've finished trialling it as a bigger plant, because I've only had it in here a couple of years, and it's been a small plant. It's got bigger this year, so hopefully we'll see some good results from that. Behind it, Deschampsias. Deschampsias are what I call a species indicator, and by that I mean they tend to like to grow in places where it's damp. So if you've got a bit of a damp area in the garden and you want a grass and you like little stubby grasses, go for that one. It produces lovely seed heads. It's not really grown for this. I like this section of it, or this part of it in its growth. I do like that. But it will produce some lovely seed heads. It's a bit later than one called Goldschleier, but it hangs a lot better, and it stands a bit more longer than Goldschleier and Bronzeschleier. So it's Gold Tower, and it's quite nice, and it just has this misty look about it, quite high up. Behind that, this one here. Now this is a lot fresher and a lot greener than Calamagrostis calforster. It's already flowering. It actually flowers slightly earlier than calforster. And when I talk about grasses flowering, I'm talking about seed heads, but I refer to them as flowering, so you'll just have to bear with me on that one. It's a nice one, and I've decided that what I want to do is actually show it with the calforster, so in the same border. So I want to be able to get an idea of what the two look like, because apparently if you pair them up like this, they can look really nice. So we'll see about that. So that's what I've done. So I've got 1, 2, 6 in here at the moment, and I could add to that, but they do get quite a size. Now the difference between calforster, which is that one, Calamagrostis calforster, is that you can see that's stiffly upright. This one is a little bit more splaying. If you can see, if you can see that, it looks a little bit more splay, but it's really good, and it holds its own. It's not a problem for it. It's just a little bit more lax and loose, but it's really nice, and it just lasts all season like calforster does. Before we go up further up that border, we'll look at this one here. This one's it's actually listed as a pennisetum, which is a pennisetum obviously, and people would recognise it as red buttons, but this one's supposed to be slightly different. It's Rupellii, but I think they're one and the same, if I'm honest. I think Rupellii is just an old name for it. So the person I got it from, I think, is a bit confused, but I don't know. I could be wrong on that one. We'll go back here before we get much further, and we've got another Deschampsia. Now, I plant plants, and because we're new in this garden, I try to put the labels with them, but I'm not always successful with that. And here, I cannot find the label. I would have put it with it, but we have lots of pigeons in here, wood pigeons, and they come and pull out the labels all the time. And I suspect that's what's done here. Now, I did have another Deschampsia here called Silver Mist next to it, which is a lot smaller. And I think I put it here so I could identify it later on anyway, should the label disappear, because this often happens in this garden. And if it is what I think it is, it's called Cabana Buta. And it is a good, strong plant. And it gets to about 4 foot in its flower head. Well, maybe 3 foot. We'll see here, because we're on a bit of a slope. Now, if we go further down this side, which is the longer border, then we've got a new seat in here. It's called Kathy's Seat. It's my girlfriend. I bought it for her 50th birthday, and we was originally intending to use it as a a swing, but we never did. I had this bee carved into it by a local lad. He's really clever. And then a joiner made me the seat. It's really, really nice, that. And I found myself sitting in it quite often. It's only been there about 4 or 5 days. So often that's a sign of a good placement, because I'm finding myself coming backwards and forwards sitting at it all the time. So going back to the grasses, we have what we got here, Cortaderia. So that's a pampas grass. Cortaderia Patagonia. It's more bluer, and as the season goes on and the sun hits it more, it'll be bluer and bluer. And it has these stunning flower heads when it finally gets up, and they're kind of a smoky, rusty colour as they get going, and they don't get very tall. It's a dwarfing form. They'll make, I should say, 2.5 to 3 foot up in the air, and maybe over time 4 foot, but it'll always stay fairly squat. Last year and the year before, it only produced 1 plume, and that was it. Never did any more than that, so it was a bit disappointing for me. But this year there's already about 6 or 7 plumes set, and looking at them now, probably another month they'll be out, and they do look really, really nice. So if you want a dwarfing pampas grass, Cortaderia Patagonia is the one, and it is really, really nice. There's quite a lot of nice pampas grasses. They're not all the big monsters that we're all used to seeing. Some of them are quite nice. To the right here, we've got another miscanthus. And this one's Miscanthus sinensis, and I call it Yakushimensis. It was sold to me as Yakushimensis many years ago, and I decided to keep the name so I could identify what nursery I bought it from. It was a grass specialist nursery up in Lincolnshire, and the main man there sadly died just recently, so I should probably keep that name in his memory as well. So Yakushimensis, but it's actually Yakujima. Now Yakujima is an island somewhere, I think it's Japan way on. And it produces these naturally, these miscanthus, these dwarfing miscanthus, really they are. But they're very varietal, so people select them out. There are other varieties that are being brought to the market as different named ones, because they are. Some of them do have good attributes. Some look quite nice and small. Some are taller. Some are slightly different colour. Some have better plumes than others. So they've been naming them. But I'll keep calling that Yakushimensis. There's another miscanthus here. I know we've got a lot of miscanthus. I love miscanthus. This one is not. None of the miscanthus is flowering at the moment. It's only June. It'll be another couple of months and they'll all be flowering. And at that point, I should go through the garden again and show you them again. They'll look completely different. Now, this one is Miscanthus sinensis China, and it's an Ernst Pagels raised one. Ernst Pagels is a real famous miscanthus man, and he brought a lot of them to the market, like the Malapartis I showed you at the beginning of this film. He brought that one to the market, and he brought this one to the market, and the ones that he's picked out are absolutely stunning. So while we're on the subject of Ernst Pagels, this one's called Memory. This is Miscanthus Memory, and this is named after Ernst Pagels, in his memory, I guess. Or so I'm told, and it produces the biggest plume you've seen, and floaty plume. Now, I look forward to showing you this one when it actually comes out. It'll make about 6 or 7 foot in the flower height. The grass itself will probably go a little bit higher than that, and then it'll shoot up these plumes, and it's amazing when you see it. If you look back on some of... if you go onto Instagram, look on Instagram, I'm on there as a gardener's journey. And you should see on my board there that there's several pictures of this one if you scroll through. Anything else of note in this bit here? Because I really only want to show this bit on this film today, because I've got so many different areas that I could show you. So like I say, this one's called the longer border. The reason I call it the longer border is because when we first moved here, this border was about 1 foot wide from the wall, and I adapted it, and it's gradually crept out to, I'd say that's 8 foot now in depth, and that's called the long border. And I just simply called this a longer border because it's a lot longer. It goes all the way up to the shack, which is over there. And that building, I will do another YouTube on that. I keep saying I'm going to do it. I'm about to get the doors onto it, and it's going to transform it completely once those go on. So within this border again, I've got a phormium here called Bronze Baby. It's a bit smaller than the other. They only make about 4 foot. But it's a good one to get. If you like the bronze phormiums but you don't like the size, try and find that one out. It's relatively easy to get hold of, but make sure you get the right one, because, you know, they do try and sell you anything, and they'll sell you it as Bronze Baby when it probably isn't. We've got the gym, totally tangerine, never stops flowering, been flowering for ages. We've got, this is a Rosa Gertrude Jekyll that's absolutely flowering its socks off at the moment, as you can see. And has been doing for about 3 weeks now. Behind it, we've got Elianthus salicifolius. Now, I've had to move it from up further up the garden because it was not happy where it was. And it's finally going into the swing of it. Now, it will grow as tall as this structure here. It should reach the top of that, and it'll have little yellow flowers on it. And it's called the Afghan hound plant, and you really buy it for its leaf, not its actual flower. It has an annoying habit sometimes of flopping. About a month and a half, 2 months in, it'll sort of, all its stems will bow over, and then often it'll correct itself and it'll be back up again. One way of stopping that is to absolutely overwater it. Just keep watering it. It likes a watery position, so if you can get it into a damp garden what's really damp, then that should be okay. And I'm talking about the plant there. Another one here. I bought this at Beth Chatto's. It's not a Beth Chatto plant, but it's called Persicaria Blackfield. But it really is a good one. And again, I've moved it in here this year, so it's relatively small at the moment. It will eventually make it up to about 3 foot, and it produces a typical sort of Persicaria head, but it has a lovely colour to it. And it's got flecks of black in it. Well, it's not flecks of black. The deeper in, and it kind of looks black. I don't know if it's called, if the reason it's called Persicaria Blackfield is because of that, but I suspect it is because there's another one called Persicaria Orangefield, which come from the same batch. So maybe they're picking up on attributes. We bought a Sangra Sorba that was sold as Obtusa. Now, a friend of mine says he don't think that's Obtusa. Now, I've got to disagree, but we will disagree. We like disagreeing. I think it is, but who knows? It may not be. You might be right. Now, this is a new structure I've put up here this summer. I started off with this little section here, that section on the left, and that's all it was, those 3 posts, and then I put that wire into it, which is a metal reinforcing bar, and it rusts, and it looks really nice. And then I decided that it wasn't enough, so I was always intending to put another structure further across the lawn, which I did. So that was part 2, and then I decided after that actually it needs to be a bit more. So we came up with this pergola, call it what you will. I call them pergolas, and I will be growing some stuff up this structure. They're easy to put up. I put it up myself. If you look to the right of this picture where that post is, that's about 2 foot higher than the one on the left. So I am remedying that. I am going to be taking that down. I will be cutting it, and I've got other things that I'm going to put on the floor there, so the grass will completely go, and it will be a nice little seating area with some interesting plants. I've already planted some roses up it. I only got these yesterday. I'll try and name them now for you, just in case you're interested. Here's one that's very, very floriferous, and it produces what he describes as hanging bunches of roses. And this is the one it is. So this is called, hang on, I can't see that, Super Fairy. It's got the award of garden merit. I could have chose any rose, but this chap just happened to have them. I know he's a good grower. It was at a plant fair locally, and I bought it. It's going to grow up this. I've got to pin it up, and it will make its way all the way across this. Now, the one thing you may have noticed is I've got barbed wire on here. Normally you just put ordinary wire, but I have lots of wacky things up at Grassy Bottom, and I don't like to do it just normal. Let's see if we can get a shot up there just to show you what that is. So always try and use something interesting. Now, what I'm hoping eventually is that these will slightly rust to match in with the reinforcing bar. I'm not sure they will. I think it's mild steel. I'm not sure whether that rusts very well. But anyway, it doesn't matter, because what I'm hoping is that they will, the roses will come up and over this, and we'll tie them in, and they'll do what they need to do. I've also got some fairy lights for this, believe it or not, and I'm going to put those up as well. The little tiny skinny things. You'll never notice them when they're up, but you will notice them at night. Okay, and I've got another rose there. This one I do like. Quite like this. Kathy decided she wanted this one. She picked quite a good one. Well, it stood out a mile actually, and it's called Starlight Symphony. Starlight Symphony, and it's nice. It's nice. It's a white. It's what's classed as a pillar rose, really, and it's recommended for pergolas like this. And it'll probably only make 8 or 9 foot, so it'll do quite well. This isn't the end of it. I've got more climbers to put up on this actual thing itself, so that's going to be a bit of a process through the summer. There we go. A little walk through the grass borders. Thanks for looking. Ta-da.